Hi, welcome to TheGunBlog.ca. My name is Nicholas Johnson, and my guest today is Wes Winkel. He's the president of the Canadian Sporting Arms and Ammunition Association, CSAAA, as well as the owner of Elwood Epps Sporting Goods in Orillia, Ontario. Hi, Wes. Thanks for joining me today.
Good morning, Nicholas. How are you?
Really good, and I'm really happy to have you here. I love the you people who have watched our interactions, our conversations before know that you have this. You run Elwood Epps, which is one of Canada's largest independent gun stores, maybe even one of the biggest biggest gun stores. Period. So you have that inside info of in the field, and you have, as president of the CSAAA, you have this overall view from being in contact with the firearm industry across Canada and kind of getting that macro view. So really, always love your perspective. Let's talk about what's happening in the markets now. We're recording this on September 11th of 2023. What are you hearing from your members about the market these days?
Well, we're hearing that in different, there's all different categories inside of our industry, but on the firearms category, that inventory is at a high rate right now. Firearms are available at a fairly large rate at the manufacturing, wholesale, and retail sectors. With the exception probably of lever action rifles, there's still a shortage in that from companies like Henry and Browning and Winchester. There's still a large demand on lever actions, and the supply is still fairly low there. But otherwise, the supply is quite high, so it's a great time to be a firearms consumer as far as availability goes. With the downside, of course, is that the inflationary measures of Canada have affected all sectors of our economy, but especially on the firearm side, the prices are a little higher than where they have been, and that's unfortunate. But the supply is high.
Interesting. I'm just going to put on screen a chart that I follow. It's the from StatsCan. The data is from StatsCan. The chart is by me. These are guns imported each day on average. So the average daily number of firearms imported. And the last data point on the right end there, that's January to July of this year. StatsCan just released those numbers last week. Imports, I follow imports. They're an incomplete indicator. They're a backwards looking indicator because as you educated me, imports take 3, 6, 9 months from the time you make an order until the time they come in. And so there's a huge lag in terms of what this number tells us. But I'm seeing in terms of the average daily gun imports, we're pretty high. So we're much closer to the top of a cycle, if there is a cycle, than to the bottom. So that kind of ratifies what you're saying, that there's a high supply. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. We tend to in Canada not always be the vendor's first choice of consumers as far as what comes to manufacturing and wholesale distribution, just because we have a high regulatory environment. So now that there's been a bit of a downturn in the U.S. Retail and wholesale sector, firearms availability is higher at the manufacturing level. So therefore, we've been able to bring firearms in at a fairly high rate into Canada. It does help with our availability when the U.S. has a slowdown. There's been a little bit more stability in the market down there. Plus, you got the fact that there's, you know, the best way to say it is, again, the higher retail prices have caused a bit of a retail slowdown there. So we just have a more access to inventory than what we have had in the past.
Interesting. Okay. And there's, I'm just going to put this up too. If for anybody who wants to know more, why imports matter and what they tell and what they don't tell, I just put the website up there. You can go to thegunblog.ca/reference for more information on that. And I wanted to pick up on something you said that the lever. I thought that was really interesting about the lever actions being in high demand. And my assumption is people are still. I've just heard this over the past 2-3 years. People are still looking for guns that are unlikely to be prohibited by the Liberals. Is that still
No
the case?
question. There's people that like to have fun shooting, and obviously, repeating firearms are more fun to have and to plink with than those that are single shot or manual operation like a bolt action. Um, there's still a spook of semi-automatic firearms in Canada because of the fact that a lot of people are sitting at home looking at one or two firearms that they've purchased that they really enjoy that they're no longer allowed to use because of the prohibition. So yeah, you see lever actions being the new trend for sure. And just there's still a lot of romance to the lever action in our industry as a whole, as far as the Wild West, and there's a fairly large uptick in just rural country living as a whole, and then that tends to go to the lever action firearms. Plus, there's been a real shortage of ammunition availability over the last few years, and the lever action cartridges tend to be some of the more available cartridges out there as well.
Interesting. And what else is hot these days?
We're still seeing a fairly large uptick in firearms for retail from rimfire. Rimfire, because I think again the cost of shooting has gone up and people have gravitated more towards rimfire. Plus, we're seeing a little bit of an older demographic in the shooting industry, and the rimfire's quieter. There's less recoil. It tends to be a popular thing right now. So rimfire is still quite hot, especially in the target fields. We're seeing still a lot of guys gravitating and gals gravitating towards pistol caliber carbines. Again, for inexpensive shooting and the availability of ammunition. So those are probably the three largest trends that we're seeing: is lever action first, rimfire second, and pistol caliber carbines third.
It's so interesting, and I feel like a cliche because I'm fitting. I'm like so average. I'm the guy you just described. I went, just the other day, shot my 308, old World War II 308. Oh, sore shoulder. I go to my single shot 22. It's just one is fun, the other is not.
Well, this is it. It's one of the things that if you combine the fact that there's a bit more recoil, and a bit more noise, and but also the fact that now the cost of ammunition has gone up. All three of those factors, I think, are driving more people into rimfire shooting. Yes.
Really interesting. And would you say when you either from your store or from what you're hearing from members across the country, is there any way to gauge, are we at a like in terms of the outlook, are we looking forward? Are we in good shape? Are you expecting a slowdown in the months ahead? What's your sense of where things are headed?
Well, I mean, there's no question industry wide we've come through a bit of a tough summer. We had some slowdowns. We there's been so much volatility in the market. Last summer we were seeing record handgun sales, of course, because of the Trudeau Liberals prohibiting the sale of handguns. We saw record sales on the handguns, and a lot of, I think, our market and our consumers overspent their budget last summer trying to get their handguns in place. And we've had that trend for the last couple of years with a lot of volatility. Plus, the shortage of ammunition, I think, has put a lot of people, in a mode where they've been filling their basements or filling their ammunition closets with ammo, just trying to make sure they have the supply they need. So all of a sudden now, when we're seeing a little bit more availability and a bit of a calm down, people have kind of put their wallets away a little bit, and I think that's understandable. When you're in a budget or family situation, and you're talking about your expenditures, all of a sudden it might be harder to justify those expenses in the shooting sports when so much has been put towards it the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I'm just bringing to mind now. So we're doing this in September 2023, and I'm just remembering. Okay, we had early 2000s. We had COVID, and then the gun market went crazy. Like just incredible shopping spree in 2020. Then we also had the firearm confiscation orders of May 1st, 2020, when that created a whole other series of turbulence, and now we have the economy really slowing down. So yeah, it's for any industry, and I guess especially or including guns, it's been a bumpy 3 years.
Yeah, by far the most volatile 3 years that I've ever been a part of. I've been here now a little over 25 years, and I've never seen anything like it. Like it's a yo-yo. It's very hard to predict. It's very hard for buyers in our market to predict, where things are going to go. But yeah, we are expecting some leaner times here for the next short order, especially because of. Just the fact that exactly those factors we talked about, that people have kind of overstretched their bounds, and things are expensive, and the cost of living is very high right now. We talk to obviously other parts of our recreational industry quite a bit, whether it be boating or ATVs or snowmobiles, and all of those are trending downwards. It's just harder to spend money on toys when you got to feed yourself. It's that simple, right?
And it's also that's for like again, I'd love to have your feedback if my analysis is valid. That in COVID, people are it's scare basically a scare purchase. People are scared. They're just arming up to defend themselves, their families in case of economic collapse or zombie. The virus infected zombies. Like there's that kind of mentality. And now we're seeing it's also now back to the traditional sporting and hunting, and more that's discretionary spending. So one is seen as survival spending, and one is kind of discretionary spending. Is that thinking valid?
Absolutely. I mean, the sales that we saw at the start of the COVID situation were definitely, a high sales in shotguns, defense style shotguns. A lot of buckshot and tactical buckshot was being sold and stuff like that. Whenever people go to the grocery stores and they see empty shelves, whether and that was a trend that happened at the start of COVID where people were stocking up on stuff. Naturally, as a lot of adults fear for their families, and do they have to feed their families or defend their stuff? And it's one of those things. When it comes right down to it, we all want to take care of our families first. And one of the things that people looked to was their firearms closet, making sure they had that what they deemed they needed to make that defense possible, or maybe have to harvest food in the future. And then as things calm down, yeah, all of a sudden that spending doesn't seem as important.
Okay, it's so interesting. It's so, for me, it's so easy to forget where we've come from just in the very, very recent past few years.
Yeah.
Now I wanted also just to zoom out here. I should have perhaps asked you at the beginning. The CSAAA. What is CSAAA? What is your role in the firearm ecosystem?
Yeah, so the CSAAA is a little different than the consumer groups. We have the large consumer lobby groups, and then we have our industry group, which is the CSAAA. We don't have members that are not inside the firearms industry. So we are elected and volunteer board of directors. There's no paid directors on our board. Everyone that is volunteering their time. They're all from the industry, from across Canada. It's a national organization, and we represent the manufacturers and wholesalers and retailers in our industry, as well as the sales reps and the guides and basically the overall shooting sports industries. Sometimes the industry has challenges that are much different and much more future looking than sometimes the consumer groups, and it's a very different environment as far as the way sometimes our members think, and where we have to go with our decisions in life. So therefore the CSAAA is a very important component of the firearms lobby industry. We tend to be less politically affiliated than some of the consumer groups, and more in a lobby situation with whoever's in power at the time. We have to create a regulatory environment where we're able to conduct business. The laws of the land are very frustrating to all of us. But when you work inside the industry every day and you have to deal with the regulatory environment that exists, you have to have a little bit more of a working relationships. We're in regular contact with the chief firearms officers of our provinces, with the business inspectors, with obviously the RCMP and the federal regulatory environment, as well as sometimes the Minister of Public Safety.
Got it. So you bring an industry perspective. Your members are mostly like to put it in like gun shops, the gun importers, representatives of the firearm manufacturers. So, for example, I don't know, I'm just going to pick a brand, a Glock, Remington, so manufacturers like that, as well as the distributors, so the names that are not known by consumers. I'm not. You don't need to reveal the membership, but the types of people like North Silva or Big Rock or Wolverine, those types of that type of distributor, people who distribute the guns from the factory to the consumer or to the store.
Absolutely. You have basically those three steps: the manufacturers, which for the most part are foreign. They're not Canadian. They're either American or European. And then you have representatives of those manufacturers that kind of liaison between the importers and the wholesalers. So that that's kind of the way the structure goes, is the manufacturers and those representatives, and then you have the importers and distributors, and then most of those firearms then get from there, they trickle to the retailers, and that is where most of the consumers see them, is at the retail facing side.
That's it. And it's just, I love over the years you've shared incredible stories of this industry that doesn't get a lot of coverage in the media. So even people who've been gun owners for a long time, for years or decades, don't actually know much about how the industry works. I find it fascinating.
It's quite true. having that perspective on it, sometimes it's quite interesting that there's a lack of knowledge kind of on the way the chain goes. And a lot of those importers also importing for law enforcement and military as well, right? So you have a very interesting relationship with a lot of those wholesalers and importers where they're frustrated because of the retail and regulatory environment for consumers, but they also have to engage in a lot of government situations because they're supplying the police and military with the products required, to for law enforcement or for military purposes in Canada.
It's very, very interesting, and that just to illustrate that, when I look at the gun data, I'm seeing why are handgun imports? Why are there still handgun imports, even though handgun imports have officially been prohibited? Well, that's because when I look at where it's coming from, well, it's coming from New Hampshire. Well, what's happening? Well, the Canadian military is getting its. I'm assuming this is not in the data. This is just me assuming. Well, that's Sig Sauer has its main factory in New Hampshire, and it's supplying the Canadian military. So that's what those handguns of several thousand a month. These recently. I'm assuming that's what it must be. So
Absolutely, it is. With again a very frustrating situation with handguns and a devastating impact to the industry. You know, uh, you hear so much in the news and in the media about the hunting gun ban, as they called it, when with C-21, and a lot of people coming to the defense of it in the industry. Hunting, of course, is a very large component of our industry, but having serviced the shooting market for many years, it's a smaller component. Most hunters will buy one or two firearms every decade or so. They might buy 5 or 6 boxes of ammunition per year to use in the field. Whereas when it comes to the handgun shooting sports, this is a much more of a culture where people are using these items weekly. They might be going to the range once or twice a week. They shoot a high volume of ammunition. They're very in tune with their sport, where they're trading their firearms in and out. They're buying accessories for them. So with losing the handgun sales demographic, I would admit, even myself, I've been shocked at how it affects the overall sales in general for our members. You see in decreases in every category, from reloading components to ammunition sales, holsters, magazines. Every one of those fields are down in the industry because we've lost the sale of handguns. Even though handguns are still allowed to be used at the range and still are being used at a high rate, once the consumer has the firearm and the accessories that they need, they tend not to buy many unless they wear it out or break it. Whereas when you're trading handguns and you're buying and selling, and you upgrade a handgun, now when you get that new handgun, whether it be new or used in your possession, now you get the accessories that you want for that handgun, whether it be the magazine holder that fits your belt, or a holster that fits your belt, to new reloading dies, or whatever it takes. So obviously, with losing the handgun sales, it's been a dramatic decrease in sales across the country, and had a devastating effect. It's been hard to watch.
And I'm even just thinking of myself since COVID and then the prohibitions, and that's fewer for just for me personally. I don't, I'm at fewer trips to the gun store, and that just so. Less. My budget the past 3 years has been a lot less than the previous few years. So
Absolutely, and it's amazing from being in the store. We sell a high volume of used guns and do a lot of trading back and forth with our consumers, and it's amazing how many consumers still are unaware that you're not allowed to sell handguns. We get called to sell collections all the time, and when you explain to people, they have a real lack of understanding that the items they had in their home that had tremendous value last summer have basically been robbed of their value by the Canadian government, and our only option as retailers is to buy and sell those outside of Canada. And the regulatory environment, both in Canada and the United States, makes it very difficult to export those firearms, and very expensive to do so. And a lot of the firearms that we have in Canada aren't as largely desired in other countries, because they had special longer barrels made for them and stuff, and they're just not as desirable in other countries. So it's it's a tough situation on the handgun side. We're all very frustrated by it. We're in the as an industry, we're advising the federal government all the time of the hardships this is creating, and we're fighting to try to get some kind of an acknowledgement from them that it's having a devastating effect. But again, so far it's fallen on deaf ears.
It, it's and yeah, and anybody who wants to learn more about, we're not going to go deep into the how we got here and all that, but yeah, subscribe to TheGunBlog.ca, subscribe to CSAAA. I share your updates, and I love the updates that you share about your meetings and your yeah, what's going on for the industry. And one of the things, just to transition to that, my segue to the Legends program, I just learned that you have this legends. You want to recognize and celebrate the legends of the firearm industry. Could you say where things are with that now?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a situation where we have obviously a very long-standing industry association, and a very vast firearms industry in Canada, been around for a number of years, and there's been basically no mechanism to recognize people that have given a lot of their adult life up to promoting the industry and the shooting sports in general, as well as volunteering their time to defend the interests of the industry. So we kind of had a discussion of maybe it's time that some of these individuals get honored. And there's no better organization to do it than the industry itself. So yeah, we have put together a criteria and kind of a mechanism to honor these people. Really putting a lot of weight on longevity and volunteering the time. When it comes to the points and how they get assessed, whether they qualify for our Legends program, it comes down to kind of the leadership in the industry as far as on the business side, but also on the volunteering side. And yeah, we're very proud to bring the Legends program together and to honor these individuals that a lot of us sit here and are able to participate in this industry because people gave so much time in the past. So we're very proud to do that. We're going to have our first dinner in Ontario, but with plans to have Legends honorary dinners across the country, and to acknowledge the participation of these legends of our industry for many years. And it's something that we're very proud to put forward. Yes.
Very, very good. And I saw you just announced, I believe, the first three. The first three, are they? I'm not sure what the winners, or the first three people you want
Yeah.
to honor.
Yeah, the honorees. We have John Mock, who's unfortunately deceased, but John was a long-standing president and CEO of Stoker Canada. He also was the president of the CSAAA for many years. Volunteered his time in many different wildlife organizations. Was always a tremendous supporter of youth initiatives, youth hunting and shooting initiatives. Just an incredible individual. Has spent a lot of time helping out the industry, and like I said, we miss him every day. Unfortunately, he's gone, but it's still a wonderful thing to honor him and his accomplishments, and for his family to share in that, and his friends and his associates. And then we have Steve Cuppy, who has been a little more behind the scenes, more on the wholesale side, where he was the president and operator of Greywood Sales, which basically represented the interests of many, many companies over the years. Many companies, but mostly with Winchester Ammunition and Browning Firearms, but countless organizations over the years, Garmin, etc. And Mr. Cuppy, again, volunteered his time, has been a promoter of the industry, has donated a great deal of financial resources to promoting shooting sports and to get facilities up and running. He's been a tremendous contributor for a long time, and we're happy to honor him. And the last one, of course, is Kathy Trowbridge from Excalibur. Her and her husband started Excalibur crossbows. They've been a manufacturer in Canada, one of the most largely recognized crossbow manufacturers in the world. Really put us on the world stage in that category. And Kath has, again, donated her time. She was a director and president of CSAAA. She was a director for many, many years. A large financial contributor, making sure that trade shows and that were properly sponsored. She donated a lot of her time and money and was always there to lend a helping hand for any initiative we had going forward. Just a long time server of the community. And she is now retired, and but we're happy to honor her for all of her dedication and support.
I think that's really beautiful, and as I get older, I also find it really touched by that, because these names are not names that I'm familiar with. They're not names that I think, like you said, the quote unquote the retail associations. A lot of people know their directors and their staff, but we don't know the gun community, the buyers, the people who, the retail level. We don't know a lot of these names, so it's
Yeah,
wonderful to hear that
it,
them being honored.
and that's it. I mean, it's one of those things that the truth is that you can get up every morning, go to work, and do your job and be financially successful if you run a good business. But to add that extra time and effort to make sure that you donate your time and try to defend the industry as a whole, as well as to promote the shooting sports, is something that really is not a requirement. And because it's at the wholesale level, a lot of retailer or consumers aren't aware of that work. And that's why I think it's really important that we have this Legends program to kind of educate the consumers, as well as that a lot of these individuals and companies are the reason that we're still able to participate to this day. Without their contributions, I'm not sure we still exist.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's so. Again, I didn't know these individuals, but yeah, that sounds like they made a huge contribution. So, really happy that they're being honored and recognized.
Absolutely.
The other thing that happened, and I don't want to go into the weeds on this, but the other big thing that happened this spring was around the confiscation, and the government, the Liberals announced that you were, signed a contract with you, and people. There was a lot of blowback against the CSAAA. People view some nasty language around how could you be in cahoots with the government, and how could you be advancing the confiscation. That caused, I know there was a lot of misunderstanding. I was on the town hall that you ran, and to clear the air and explain behind the scenes what happened, without getting into the nitty gritty. But could you say where things are now with that at the moment?
Well, obviously, yeah. Whenever any decision is made by any organization, you never have 100% consensus on anything. It's the nature of the way it is. And a long time ago, when the prohibition happened, and then the government announced, like you said, the confiscation program. They like to call it a buyback, but the confiscation program is a much better terminology. The industry's in a real rock and a hard place situation where we have a lot of these firearms registered to our businesses. An extremely large amount of inventory is still tied up. These businesses have to have these on their logs, and they have to be inspected regularly. They have to be insured still. The insurance costs of a lot of these high value items are very expensive. We have members that are still just to insure their prohibited inventory are paying upwards of $30,000 to $40,000 a year just to insure that. So when you're getting into 3 years, you're already talking about, before you tie up the cost of your money being tied up in the warehousing costs, just the insurance alone, some of them have spent over $100,000 to insure this inventory.
And
So
just to be clear, that's the prohibited inventory, or that's the
prohibited
overall?
inventory. Yeah, when you
That's
have
insane.
over $1 million that inventory, and you do the math on the insurance aspect, it's extremely expensive, and you have to insure it because it still is a part of your inventory assets as far as the banks and the balance books are concerned. So, yeah, it's a very difficult situation for us. Obviously, we fought and are still continuing to fight, and have supported a lot of the consumer groups' initiatives to battle this. And of course, we're hoping politically there will be a change in this initiative. But the reality of where we sit today is also in front of us, which is that the law of the land is in place, and these firearms are prohibited, and they're only covered right now under an amnesty, which probably will be extended again. But at some point will come to an end, and the government, whether we participate or not, is going to initiate a confiscation program. And in the past, our association, as well as others, has declined to participate in any way, shape, or form, or discuss the situation. And sometimes that's come with regrets, because all of a sudden you have people that have no knowledge of the industry running programs and making programs that there's no way for the industry to participate in properly. So when we were approached, and we've always been asked to be consulted on firearms issues, and we get so upset and publicly upset when the industry is not consulted. And then in a situation where you are consulted, if you say, no, we're not going to discuss this, then it's very difficult to ask for consultation in the future. So it makes it, like I said, a real rock and a hard place situation. So as an industry, we voted and we held our nose to discuss the initiative and to enter into a negotiation with the government as to the value of this inventory and how to calculate that out and how to run this program. And to be honest, we've been fighting for the businesses for the last almost 2 years for a program that we can work with, and that is an actual compensation for the inventory we've lost, not just the firearms, but the accessories and the parts that are around them. I mean, a lot of these firearms are very modular, and there's so many accessories and parts that are tied up in inventory that we also obviously want to make sure that those were properly compensated for as well. So that's the reason that the discussion was entertained. We had a unanimous vote amongst the board of directors to put it through and to continue on. And then we had obviously a majority vote with our membership, and not all members were happy. We still have some that were quite upset. They don't think we should have any conversations with the federal government on this topic, and it's understandable that I don't think anybody in this country is more upset at the situation than I am. Watching it and donating as much time as we have to it has has caused many sleepless nights. But at the same time, there is a reality that we have to live with, and that is where we're at. So, we had a lot of consumer blowback and a lot of negativity towards it. And as the leader of the organization, I took the brunt of it, and I knew that was going to come. It was not a surprise to me. It's a situation that when you sign up for leadership of anything, that it's going to come with some grief. It's just that simple. But I understand where everyone's from, and I'd be happy to discuss it with anything. But I think a lot of the grief come from a lack of understanding of the situation and what we're doing. We certainly are not partnering with the federal government to confiscate any individual firearms. That is not the situation at all. We're just trying to make sure that the business inventory gets dealt with in a appropriate and professional manner that we're able to live with. And if you look at our mandate and what we're supposed to do, we're supposed to represent our industry and lobby the government for a good regulatory environment, and that's what we're doing. It's easy to always operate in the echo chamber and the rah 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 of we hate what's happening, and trust me, I do hate what's happening. But at the same time, what we're elected for is to represent our members and make sure that our members have the best possible business environment. And when it comes to eventually losing the inventory that's registered to our business, we wanted to make sure that our businesses were properly compensated in a program that works. And I don't think anyone that would be in our shoes would not understand that situation.
And I'm still, again, as an outsider, I'm not a member of CSAAA, but just the way I imagine it, and same thing with people who answer surveys or go to the consultations when the minister's in town and want to go to the consultation. I understand we want a seat at the table. And from where I sit, it's like, well, why would you want to be at that table? Now, with what you've just explained, what you explained also in the spring when we're going through this is, there you are. Okay. Yeah. My question is, why would you want to, that's not a table you want to seat at. That's not a table you want to be seen to be seated at. But I'm not standing to lose $30,000 a year holding inventory. I'm not standing to lose my business over this. So it's a very different perspective. Like I have the luxury of theory. You and your guys and your members are dealing with the reality.
Well, yeah, and the reality is that the current federal government's in place, by our system until the fall of 2025, unless, of course, it falls before that. Does that, give them time to get any type of program going with or without the participation of the industry? The answer is yes. I mean, they have partners like IBM and the RCMP who are more than capable of structuring a program. and it was going to happen with or without us. There's no question about that. It is the legislation of the land, and so now the question is do you want to be a part and to have a say in what happens, or do you want to be a passenger and then get dictated at the end of what you're going to, the reality of what you're going to see? And again, if you're demanding consultation on firearms policy and the regulatory environment, then when people ask for your consultation, how do you say no and make the same demands? Uh, it just doesn't make sense. So we had a real difficult time with it, and we still do. I mean, every conversation we have with them feels adversarial. It's a very difficult situation. There's a real lack of understanding from the government side of how involved this is and how complicated it is. Um, but the reality is that if the consumer at home wants a North Silver or Elwood Epps or anybody to import firearms and ammunition for them in the future, they must have a valid firearms license in the country of Canada to import. And if you're in possession of inventory that's not covered by an amnesty anymore, and your business license is invalidated, we can't service the consumer anymore. So we have no ability to say we're not turning these in. We don't have the ability to hide the inventory because it's registered to us. So there really is no other option other than to participate. And whether you get dictated on how that program works or whether you participate in it, it seemed like a more proper answer was to hold your nose and participate than to thumb your nose back at the situation.
And the more you explain, the worse the taste in my mouth gets, because there's not only the financial liability, there's the criminal liability and your livelihood. Like you said, they have the power. If you don't play by the way they like, they can revoke your license, show up, and you're holding unlawful inventory. You're like, there's a huge for you. There's huge stakes. Like it's just blah.
Oh, that's it. Just the application of an import license isn't possible without those valid licenses, and we just can't participate without and with you can't risk the invalidation of your business license. It's we've seen it happen to our businesses in the past for very small violations of law or unknowingly violating laws, and we are educating our business members all the time on the perils of that. And this is another situation where politically, this should never have happened. I believe public safety wise, it should never have happened. And I still very vehemently am opposed to it. But the reality is that it happened.
And there was a lot of turmoil within the board. You about a handful of board members resigned around this issue. And you
Yeah, I
had
mean,
the AGM in June. And so the board is full. Yeah. In terms of organizationally, operationally,
yeah,
how are things?
we're still full steam ahead. We did have some executive members that volunteer that resigned, and they made some public statements about it. And for any of those that are interested, I encourage them to read them because they made it very clear that again they supported the industry association and they did admit to voting for the venture. They just were unable to risk the potential liability of their business in this day and age to consumer pushback. So that was, they made very public statements about that. Those board members I still talk to on a regular basis. They're great people. They just felt the heat, and they got a great deal of heat from their employers and their business partners that for a volunteer position, this might not be worth the amount of heat you're getting. And I completely understand it. I mean, and at the end of the day, a paycheck's a paycheck. And if you're risking that paycheck by volunteering somewhere, maybe that wasn't the right choice. On the other hand, we've had some wonderful new life into the board because of it. At our AGM, we elected new boards of directors. We had lots of interest in those positions. A lot of our membership, like I said, they voted for this. We had over 75% support in pursuing it. So again, when we had to elect a new board, there was lots of interest in it. We have filled the board back up. We have a very invigorated board. great meetings and lots of initiatives on the go. Including the legends and gunsmithing programs and many things that the consumer doesn't see. And a very cohesive board that is doing great things for our industry. So still very proud to be part of it.
That's so good to hear because the I want to end on a positive note, but just to situate the landscape right now as we're speaking, we've got the Liberals have basically has outlined that they want to do more confiscations, more prohibitions around firearms, criminal and things around storage, around ammunition, around mags. Like there's a new wave, several more waves of prohibitions, restrictions, confiscations that they're planning. We have the federal court legal challenges. We're expecting a decision any day, any minute on that. We have the economic uncertainty. So a lot of it's kind of a grim outlook on regulatory, industry, economics, all that kind of stuff. I'd like to end on something positive. What is something positive that we can look forward to as an industry, as a community? Well, take us in the coming months, coming years, coming decades. What is positive for the Canadian gun community?
Well, I think the positive that we have is that we still have a very large proportion of our population that participates in shooting sports and hunting in Canada. And, we've never had a higher rate of PAL license holders. We've never had a higher rate of gun range memberships. I mean, almost all of our gun ranges in Canada are still on waiting lists. I mean, there's an extreme demand still for places to shoot and for the opportunity to participate in the shooting sports. We have a situation where we have some huge growth in some sports. Rimfire PRS is a large growth. We're seeing that. We're seeing a large uptick in the ladies joining the shooting sports. Female gun ownership is at an all-time high rate in Canada. So we have lots of still growth inside the industry. We do have, obviously some setbacks and some reductions and some frustrating situations, and we've unfortunately lost some members inside the business community. But going forward, the positive outlook is that we're still allowed to do this, and that participation is still very high. And on the other side, on the hunting side, we still have a situation where the game opportunities in Canada in a lot of situations are better than they've ever been. So, there is stuff to be positive about for sure. We have to march forward and I encourage everyone to get a friend or a child or a lady in their life and participate in our shooting sports, introduce them to it. We have to keep our youth invigorated and keep the industry going. It's something that I have introduced my children, a lot of their friends too. Very proud of that, and I recommend every member do that and to get let's keep marching forward and not let at any time this industry fall apart in Canada.
Beautiful. I'd love to close on that. Is there anything to add or anything to go over or review or amend that from our conversation?
No, just that get out, support your local gun shop. Have conversations with them, and make sure that you have the supplies you need. We're in a situation with transportation costs continuing to increase. I don't anticipate a lot of these costs to go down. So the best time to pick up the new item that you need is now. So participate and support your local gun shop.
Beautiful. I encourage everyone who wants to know more about CSAAA to visit the website, csaaa.org, and subscribe to there's a free newsletter that they offer to keep the public informed. I encourage you to do that. I also encourage you to subscribe to my website, TheGunBlog.ca. And Wes Winkel, president of the Canadian Canadian Sporting Arms and Ammunition Association, really thank you for talking with me today. And to everyone who watched, thank you for watching.